The first truth we must understand in this message is that worry is the enemy of faith. It creeps quietly into our hearts, disguising itself as concern or responsibility, but beneath the surface, it drains our strength and blinds our spiritual vision. When we worry, we tell ourselves that the future depends on our control, not God's. Worry is not just a mental struggle, it is a spiritual one. It challenges the very nature of our trust in God. The Bible reminds us in Philippians 4:6-7, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This verse does not simply tell us to stop worrying. It tells us what to do instead: to pray, to trust, and to give thanks even before the answer comes. When we choose trust over worry, we shift the weight of our problems from our own shoulders to God's capable hands. Many of us spend our nights tossing and turning, trying to solve problems that only heaven can handle. We replay mistakes, question the future, and fear what we cannot predict. Yet, in doing so, we forget the most powerful truth. God is already in our tomorrow. He knows what lies ahead, and He is preparing the way even now. Our worry doesn't change the future, it only robs us of the peace we need today. Jesus asked in Matthew 16:27, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? The answer is no. Worry cannot add anything to our life. It only subtracts. It steals our joy, drains our strength, and distracts us from the presence of God. When you start to feel overwhelmed by uncertainty, remember who your shepherd is. The same God who led Moses through the Red Sea, who provided manna in the wilderness, and who shut the mouths of lions for Daniel, is the same God watching over you right now. He has never failed in keeping His promises. Sometimes we look at our challenges and think they are too big. But the truth is, our challenges only appear big because we have made our view of God too small. When you magnify your problems, God looks distant. But when you magnify your God, your problems lose their power. Trusting God doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It means you refuse to let fear control your decisions. It means you say, God, I don't know how you will do it, but I believe you will. Each time worry tries to creep into your heart, treat it as an opportunity to worship instead. When fear whispers, what if things fall apart? Faith should answer, even then, God will hold me together. Worry focuses on what is missing. Trust focuses on who is present. Worry looks at the problem. Trust looks at the provider. Worry tries to predict the outcome. Trust rests in the one who already knows the outcome. Life is not free of storms, but with God, we are never without shelter. The peace that comes from trusting God is not the absence of trouble. It is the assurance that no trouble can separate us from His love. The root of worry is often the desire to control what only God can handle. We worry because we fear losing control. Yet peace comes when we surrender that control to the one who never fails. You don't need to understand everything to trust His plan. Faith means stepping forward even when you cannot see the full path. When you trust God, you acknowledge that He knows what is best for you, even when it doesn't make sense. Sometimes His plan leads through valleys before it reaches victory. But even in the valley, His presence remains constant. He is not just the God of the mountaintop, He is the God of the in-between, the unseen, the unfinished. As long as you hold on to worry, your hands will be too full to receive His peace. But when you let go, when you release your fears, God fills you with calm assurance that everything is under His control. Worry says, what if? Trust says, even if. And that simple change in attitude transforms the heart. Instead of living in fear of the unknown, you begin to live in confidence of the unseen. The second truth we must embrace is that trusting God begins where our understanding ends. Human reasoning will always try to figure everything out. We want to know when, how, and why things happen. But faith doesn't operate in the realm of explanations. It thrives in the realm of trust. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your path straight. When you trust God fully, you stop leaning on your limited perspective and start leaning on His unlimited wisdom. Life may not always make sense, but God's plan is never confused. He sees the end from the beginning, and He is guiding your steps, even when you cannot see the path ahead. Many times, we try to understand God's plan through the lens of our circumstances. When things go wrong, we think God has abandoned us. When prayers seem unanswered, we assume He isn't listening. But the truth is, God is always working, just not always in the way we expect. His methods are higher, His ways deeper, and His timing perfect. You may be standing in front of a closed door right now, wondering why He hasn't opened it. But what if that door isn't meant for you? What if behind that locked door there is something that would harm your future? God's no is never rejection, it's protection. He sees the dangers you cannot see and reroutes you toward what's truly good for your soul. Trusting God means believing that He knows what He's doing even when you don't. When we face delays, disappointments, or detours, it's easy to question His plan. But faith reminds us that even the detour is part of the divine direction. Joseph's life is a powerful example. He was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned, yet every step that seemed like a setback was actually a setup for his destiny. At the end of his journey, Joseph could look at his brothers and say in Genesis 50:20, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. That's what trust looks like. The ability to see God's hand, even in the pain. The power to declare that there is purpose in what seems pointless. We all go through seasons where we can't trace God's hand, but we must still trust His heart. It's in those seasons of uncertainty that faith is proven. Anyone can trust God when everything is clear and comfortable. But true trust shines when the night is dark and silent. When you can't hear God, that's when you must remember what He already said. He promised never to leave you, nor forsake you. He promised to make all things work together for good. And He promised that those who trust in Him will never be put to shame. Trust is not a one-time decision. It's a daily surrender. Every morning you wake up, you have a choice to carry the weight of your worries or to place them at the feet of Jesus. The more you trust Him, the lighter your heart becomes. Sometimes trusting God means walking by faith and not by sight. It means stepping forward even when you don't see the next step. It means believing that His silence is not punishment, but preparation. God often hides his plan so that we can develop the strength to depend on him completely. If you knew everything, you would never need faith. But because you don't, you learn to lean on him more deeply. Faith is not about knowing the outcome. It's about knowing who holds the outcome. And the one who holds your future never makes mistakes. If you feel lost right now, if your prayers seem unanswered, and your heart feels heavy, remember this: you are still in God's hands. The author of your story hasn't stopped writing. Every chapter, even the painful ones, are leading to a beautiful ending. God doesn't waste tears, trials, or time. What feels like a breakdown is often a breakthrough in disguise. Your job is not to fix the path. Your job is to keep walking in trust. Don't let your temporary emotions destroy your eternal faith. When you don't understand what God is doing, remind yourself of what he's already done. If he carried you before, he will carry you again. The third truth in learning to stop worrying and start trusting God is realizing that your pain has a purpose. Nothing that happens in your life is wasted in the hands of God. Every disappointment, every delay, every heartbreak, and every tear has meaning when it is surrendered to him. When we go through difficult times, our first instinct is to ask, why? God. We question his love, his timing, and sometimes even his presence. But in those moments, what we often fail to see is that the very struggle we're trying to escape is the soil where our faith will grow. God never promised us a life without pain, but he did promise that he would use that pain for good. Romans 8:28 declares, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. The key word here is all things. It doesn't say some things or only good things. It says all things. Even the moments that break us are part of what builds us. Sometimes God allows us to walk through storms, not to destroy us, but to develop us. When everything is easy, we don't learn to depend on him. It's in the dark valleys that we discover his strength. It's in the silence that we learn to listen. It's in the waiting that we grow patient. God uses difficulties to prepare us for destiny. Think of gold. It only becomes pure through fire. The fire doesn't destroy the gold, it refines it. Likewise, the trials you face are not designed to consume you, but to cleanse you, to make your faith stronger and your heart softer. The enemy wants you to believe that your pain is proof of God's absence, but in truth, it's evidence of his work. When you cannot trace his hand, trust his heart, because his heart is always for you. There are seasons when life feels unfair. You might see others moving forward while you feel stuck, watching doors close while you stand in the hallway of uncertainty. But what if this delay is not punishment, but protection? What if God is keeping you from something that looks good, but isn't right? He is a loving Father who sees the full picture. You see a single frame of your life. He sees the entire film. You see the pain of today. He sees the purpose of tomorrow. Trusting God means believing that nothing is wasted, not even your tears. Every tear that falls from your eyes is seen by him, and every prayer you whisper is heard. Psalm 56:8 says, you keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. That means not a single moment of your pain escapes his attention. If you look back on your life, you'll notice that some of your greatest breakthroughs came right after your greatest struggles. The moments you thought would destroy you actually shaped you into the person you are now. You learned to pray harder, to believe deeper, and to depend more completely on God's promises. The pain that once made you cry is the same pain that taught you to trust. God specializes in turning suffering into strength. What the enemy meant for evil, God turns into a testimony. Sometimes your broken places become the very places where His glory shines brightest. So instead of asking, why me? Start saying, use me. Let your pain become a platform for God's power. Let your weakness become a window for His grace. The very situation that worries you be the foundation of the miracle you will testify about tomorrow. God is not done writing your story, and He will never waste a single chapter. The parts that seem painful now will one day make sense. You may not understand the purpose yet, but trust that there is one. God does not allow pain without reason. He allows it to birth growth, wisdom, and spiritual maturity. The fourth truth in learning to stop worrying and start trusting is understanding the power of God's perfect timing. One of the hardest lessons for a believer to learn is that God's clock does not run on human schedules. We live in a world that values speed, but God values growth. We want things instantly, instant success, instant answers, instant blessings, yet God is never in a hurry. He is patient, intentional, and precise. Every delay in your life has a divine purpose, even when it feels painful. God's timing is not late, it's deliberate. It teaches us dependence, molds our character, and prepares us for the blessings we are not yet ready to carry. The truth is, if God gave us everything we asked for exactly when we wanted it, those very blessings could crush us because we wouldn't be prepared to handle them. Waiting isn't a punishment, it's preparation. When you are in a season of waiting, it can feel like God is silent. You pray, you cry, and nothing seems to move. But silence does not mean absence. Even when you cannot see God working, He is moving behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail of your future. Think about a seed. When it is buried in the soil, it looks like it has been forgotten. Yet underground, something powerful is happening. Roots are growing, life is forming, and in the right season, that seed will break through the surface. The same is true with your prayers. You may not see results right now, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. God is working in the hidden places of your life, preparing the harvest for its appointed time. Throughout Scripture, we see examples of people who waited on God's timing. Abraham waited for decades to receive the promise of Isaac. Joseph waited years in slavery and prison before stepping into the palace. David was anointed as king, but had to wait many years before sitting on the throne. Even Jesus waited 30 years before beginning His public ministry. Each of them had a promise, but they also had a process. And that process required patience. God's promises always come with a period of preparation. A season that tests your faith, shapes your heart, and builds your endurance. Waiting time is never wasted time when it is spent trusting God. The danger of worry is that it tempts us to move ahead of God. When we grow tired of waiting, we try to create our own outcomes. We push doors open that were never meant for us. We settle for less because we're afraid God's best is taking too long. But every time we take matters into our own hands, we create unnecessary pain. Abraham did this when he tried to fulfill God's promise through his own plan with Hagar, and it led to years of conflict. God doesn't need our help. He needs our trust. The right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong thing. If God hasn't opened the door yet, it's because He's still preparing you or preparing what's behind it. Trusting God's timing means learning to rest even when you don't have answers. It means saying, Lord, I don't understand why it's taking so long, but I believe you are working all things together for my good. When you rest in His timing, peace replaces panic. You stop chasing outcomes and start enjoying His presence. You realize that God is not just concerned about the destination. He's shaping you through the journey. The waiting season refines your character, deepens your relationship with Him, and strengthens your spiritual muscles. By the time your blessing arrives, you will have the maturity to sustain it. Maybe you are in a waiting room right now, waiting for healing, for breakthrough, for direction, or for restoration. It may feel endless, but remember this: God's delays are not denials. He is aligning things in ways you cannot see. He is softening hearts, opening opportunities, and setting divine appointments. When the time is right, what seems impossible will happen suddenly. Isaiah 6:22 says, when the time is right, the Lord, will make it happen. That means the fulfillment of your promise does not depend on your pace, but on His plan. In conclusion, stop worrying about when things will change and start trusting that God already has it under control. He is never too early and never too late. He is always right on time. Every closed door, every delay, every season of silence has purpose. One day you will look back and realize that His timing was perfect all along. The same God who made the sun stand still for Joshua, who parted the Red Sea for Moses, and who raised Lazarus from the dead, that same God is in control of your timeline. So be still. Rest your heart. Let go of your anxious thoughts and say, Lord, I may not see it yet, but I trust your timing. Because when you rest in His timing, you position yourself for His best. And when His plan finally unfolds, you will see that the waiting was not wasted. It was the very thing that made the blessing worth receiving.